This is Holly Million, the founder and executive director of Artists United. Welcome to Artists United Television, the show that features members of our Artists United community of 35,000 people worldwide. Artists United is an artist-led movement for the economic and political empowerment of artists in all disciplines. Our mission is to empower individual artists to create excellent art and to unite all artists to create social change. We're aiming to create the largest network of artists in all disciplines the world has ever seen, and we're doing our best to make it to the goal. We've set a goal of 100,000 members by the end of the year. This show is a fun way for you to see who's in the Artists United community, and I try to pick always the interesting people. And today, one of my favorite people, Andy Swindler, is here on the show. Welcome, Andy. Andy, I almost called you Andley.
Andley it is. Thank you, Holly. I'm so delighted to be here. And wow, what a powerful mission you have.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're part of the mission too. And our partnership is part of the mission as well. And we'll get into some details. But first, I'd like to just explain how we met each other. We met through Denise Heyman Loa, who's the CEO of Cherry, a for-profit company that builds platforms. And she and I have a strategic partnership with our organizations. She's been helping us with our platform that we're developing to connect artists. And so we've grown in friendship too. And she was mentioning the work that she does with you. And she said, you know, Andy's a really deep guy, really spiritual guy, really emotionally intelligent guy, really technically savvy guy. He's kind of a Renaissance man. He's an amazing guy. I go, I'd like to know Andy Swindler. And she goes, you're right. Andy's the kind of guy you should know. So she put us in touch, and I got to experience your personal coaching. We did some work together around that. It was really transformative for me, but I don't want to go into all those details, but I just want to say you've already changed my life, and I'm very grateful to have you here to talk more about yourself. Can you share a little bit about your background and what you do with the viewers?
I would be happy to, Holly. And I remember from that very first meeting that you and I had, there was a connection. You know, there was an energetic connection, an intellectual connection. We saw all these possibilities emerging between our missions and our work and the things we've been building. So, and that's unfolding, right? We're still working on so much of that. So for me, so my purpose is to bring hearts together. And that now manifests in a lot of different ways. So I'll pick up the thread you just said about personal coaching. So a lot of what I focus on right now is purpose. And it's a deep, energetic process. A lot of my job as a coach is really to help people address any kind of resistance they might be facing, particularly change makers who often look at the world I think a lot of us want to build, realize we're not there. And it can seem oppressive. It can seem like there's something holding us down, holding us back, and that can cause a lot of fear. And so for those who do have a larger purpose, maybe a global purpose, a lot of the work is to first realize what's in the way of that, and then to connect to what we call a trusted source of wisdom, a guide to learn that, and then eventually to bring that into life and to manifest that. And I think a lot about, even before we met, I was thinking a lot about the connection between purpose and artists through this lens of the trusted source, through this lens of, we could call it intuition or heart-driven leadership and work in the world. And a lot of it, there's something common I hear from a lot of artists, which, say, well, why are you an artist? I'm like, well, I can't not be an artist. It's a calling. It's just the thing that comes out of me. And it's a process, right? It's not even calling it a thing might not be right, because that's a little, more about the action or the result rather than the actual flow and the process and the energy. And I think it's very much similar for how I look at purpose. The people I work with have a calling, and they may feel like they're in a transition, or they may feel like there's just something they're meant to do and they're not doing it for whatever reason, or everything they've done in life up until now has actually prepared them to take that next step, even if it doesn't seem obvious or it's not all lined up. So I do that with individuals as we work together, and leaders. I owned a business for 14 years, a digital marketing agency, and we built this is where I learned a lot about the technology and marketing and everything, because we built software, we did all kinds of things. I learned a ton about leadership. I learned a lot of things the hard way, some very expensive lessons. And that, I exited that agency about 2.5 years ago, and then I went all in on purpose. And it's really beautiful now, because when I work with especially leaders and CEOs that have a really big impact on people's lives. I mean, quantifiably, most people are miserable at work, and we can quantify that a lot of different ways. So I love the idea of business as a lever point for how we can improve people's lives, how we can send people home from their work at the end of the day with a smile on their face. And it doesn't mean everything is all rainbows and unicorns all the time, but it means that they were honored and they were respected as human beings. They did fulfilling work, and then they can bring that out into the world. They can bring that back to their families. They can bring that, into their communities and all the areas of the world. And so the other thing I'll add just about my background is, I'm a musician. I play piano and drums, and I've always dabbled in photography. I would say those are my art forms, and I think we'll maybe get to that a little bit later. How it's been an interesting journey for me to even embrace that idea of being an artist and what that means or doesn't mean for me. So that's me, and I'm in Chicago, Illinois. Actually, that's relevant.
Yeah, that is relevant. All right. Wow. I learned some new things about you even in that description. I haven't even realized you were a drummer and a musician. How very cool. And I guess you should explain to people that you have more than one organization, don't you? It's FeelReal and Live Love.
That's right. So thank you. My coaching practice, coaching and consulting practice, is called Lead from Love.
Lead from Love. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that's where it's leadership, transformation, organizational, cultural transformation. Essentially, how can business and leadership contribute to human flourishing? I think that's the shortest, most succinct way to think about it. And yes, I've also been incubating for almost 12 years now, since receiving a vision and a dream, this idea for FeelReal. And it's all about real-time dialogues online in small groups. I think that's the simplest, shortest way to say it. And, the purpose for that is very much aligned with mine. It's to bring together hearts that have been divided by minds. When I look at how people communicate on the internet, there's a lot of dysfunction there. There's a lot of really not meeting people as human beings. It's a lot of vitriol. It's a lot of just sort of coming in and maybe with a confirmation bias and saying, oh, yep, I'm going to grab onto that because that kind of makes me feel comfy and sort of confirms my worldview, or I'm just going to come and sort of spit at something and then just take off. And I think that's part of our evolution. I don't just want to stand in criticism of that. But I got really excited when I owned my agency about social media. I was like, wow, this is a democratizing force of technology. I think this is some really important evolution for our species in terms of how we're creating these global networks. And I mean, even here, right? Like the fact that we're sitting here using this technology and even how we met, would we have met otherwise? I don't know. Could we communicate as easily? Who knows? So there's a lot of really beautiful technology and beautiful resources that have been developed. And I think we're actually in our adolescence of how we're using them. And so FeelReal is an experiment to say, well, first of all, to bring together the space holders that are already out there doing this work. And I've been meeting them and mapping them for years. And that's where I want to start. So it's not like this revolutionary new idea. It's actually this emergence over particularly the last 10 years, I've noticed, circling communities and space holders and coaches and all sorts of people who understand that what we need are brave spaces for emergence. And I think that's related to art as well. Sometimes art is created through pressure and experiences, maybe even violence, and a lot of times I think art is created by allowing space for something to emerge and not really thinking about it, but allowing that energy to flow from the heart. So that's what FeelReal is, and it's so beautiful to partner with you on that in the ways that we're talking about. And that's the tone of it, is like to honor all of these communities that are doing beautiful work and how they're connected already, and then also create a place for them to come play together in a sense. And it's very much why Denise introduced us, because that's what Chari does. That the whole platform is this idea of these connected communities, that you get the best of both worlds, right? The communities get their autonomy and get their space, and we can all connect and share resources. And I think that's how we're going to, get past this tipping point. I actually think there's already an elevated, maybe even a critical mass of elevated consciousness, but it's very fragmented right now. And so, and I believe you share that vision, how do we, and that's what a lot of what Artists United is about, right? How do we get people together and align them? And it's so exciting.
I know I don't have to say a thing. You're saying everything I would want to say myself. So thank you, Andy. We align very closely. And I've always said, and I say in all the speeches that I deliver as I go around to the events that Artists United does around the country, and I say that we live at the best possible time to deal with all of the crises that face humanity and the planet, because for the very first time in history, we have the ability to connect and collaborate on a massive scale, thanks to the tools that now exist. And you said we're in our adolescence. I think it's a little earlier. It's more like first or second grade. We're still, we got the tools, but we don't really understand yet how to do this. And we're finding our way. But there are people out there like yourself who are creating community and bringing people together. We had this idea at Artists United of Vibe Tribe, we call it, which is a way to create these smaller circles where people regularly connect with each other, the artists, and are able to give each other emotional, spiritual, moral, and practical support through their regular exchange and their ability to find each other and to have these deeper conversations. And so when I heard what you were doing, I knew that it aligned very nicely. And we've been talking now about partnership, and we're planning to partner in delivering that sort of circle to Artists United members in different regions where we work: New Orleans, San Francisco, and Dayton, Ohio, where we're launching our Confluence Tour starting today. I get on a plane and fly to Dayton, and we kick off our 16-city, 4-country tour, but knowing that there's a way to connect the people once they've connected to the Artists United, the big membership, is what makes the difference, because we can't relate to people on a mass scale, right? We have to relate to people on a smaller, more intimate scale, and that's what you're enabling to happen. I'm wondering if you could describe a little bit more about the circles and how do you make that possible? How does it work?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a few, master questions that have been bubbling up for me in particularly the last few months. And one of them is simply, how do we scale intimacy? Which is intentionally paradoxical. I love paradoxes because you can't actually scale the act of intimacy. But what I think we can scale is access to intimacy. And that's what this is about. And that's why I love our discussion, because we're talking about empowerment, ultimately. We're talking about, so it would start with facilitating circles. And we're looking at different models, but right now what we're sketching out is that it would be 6 different circles. And in the FeelReal model, we call them campfires. And then contrasted to larger group gatherings, we call bonfires. And even within a bonfire, maybe up to 100 people, we still must break out into smaller campfires as part of that journey, as part of that experience. Because that's, I think what we've proven on the internet is that 100 people can't have a conversation. 1,000 people certainly cannot have a conversation. I'll go to these comment threads on Facebook, and it'll be, and I'm not anti-Facebook, but it is what it is. And frankly, we're all part of creating it. That's a lot of where I stand. And if we want something different or better, we have to go create that, right? So we can't just stand in criticism of something. It's like all of this, and I know what you're about, is how do we make something different? How do we build what we want? And, but I'll go to a comment thread and I'll have, 50,000 comments. I'm like, what is that? Is that a conversation?
That's people shouting in the wind. That's what that is.
So, and sometimes I've seen very fruitful little mini conversations and threads and things, but I think they're the exception, not the rule. So the idea is, and what we're exploring, and generally what FeelReal is all about, is having facilitated circles, having facilitated dialogues. And that's tapping into all kinds of different resources. I generally just refer to people who do that as space holders. But there are at least 3 major circling schools out there. One of my partners has basically built her own program over the 10 years, and I don't think she's alone. So it's a way of honoring all of that space holding and inviting people into that. I mean, one of the first things at FeelReal is simply going to be a community calendar to say, oh, at 4 o'clock on Thursday, Andy's going to host a discussion about systemic racism, and part of that is disrupting the one-to-many distribution format. We are just, I'll speak for myself. I feel often overwhelmed by the content that's available, and it's beautiful on the one hand. I've actually said for many years that the internet has succeeded in giving everybody a megaphone, but we've not done such a great job of filtering it, and I think that's the challenge. And so the next step, I think, is about being in intimacy. Being not just sort of absorbing content or receiving content. And I'm not suggesting that goes away entirely, but it's about getting out of that passive experience and really interacting. And that means we have to show up, and it's an opportunity for us to explore ourselves and our emotions and who we are. And then we'll grow, I think, through that experience. And I was actually just talking with a colleague yesterday about the difference between presence and knowledge, that maybe presence is actually more important than knowledge in many cases. And I think that is the number one thing that's holding us back as a global society, is that we retreat from intimacy. We're afraid of it. We're afraid of the consequences. Those of us with more privilege are even afraid of that discussion, because it can seem like, oh, somebody's attacking me because I have more privilege or something. So I do a lot of work in that space too, and I try to think of it as a gratitude practice, right? Instead of being defensive, sink into the gratitude of it. Sink into, well, isn't it amazing that I have this life, and maybe I can share that with other people or resources. And that's a lot of what drives me at a deeper level, is simply that I have had extraordinary opportunities and access to love throughout my whole life, and particularly with my family, and not everybody does. And that's my internal motivation to say, this is what I want for everybody. And so this idea, going back to the circles and the campfires, they're facilitated, but then what we're exploring is then how do we also expand that within a community? How do we empower the people who want to pick up the torch to then go and lead their own campfires and their own circles and carry that on? And that's necessary, right? If that doesn't work, then there's no way we can scale this, right? There's no way. We don't have enough space holders right now, I think, in general, in the world probably, to provide spaces for everybody. So how can we find the people and activate them who want to go forth and
I'll help you find those people. Andy, I love it. I'll help you find those people, and you can help activate them. How does that sound? Is that a good exchange?
I love it. And you are, wow, that is a superpower you have.
I kind of feel like we could talk for a couple more hours, Andy. There's always more, and maybe what we'll do is we'll have you back on the show to talk about some of the more specific tools you've developed, and also I'd love to have you talk more about the coaching that you do, because I found it really extraordinary and rich and very positive for me. But we're coming to the end of the show pretty soon, and before we get to that point, I want to make sure that people know how to contact you. Can you explain what your website is? Tell them what your website is, or websites, or email, or how can people find out more about what you do?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yes, and I agree. We probably could talk for several hours. So, in fact, we have. So, for the coaching and consulting practice, you would find that at leadfromlove.io. And there are some models on there. And on the contact page, you'll find links to all of my contact information, social media, anything you want there. I'm easy to find. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to offer to your community, anybody listening, a free consultation. And that would be a good way to explore together what might be possible. And then for FeelReal, the website is feelreal.net. And go there to learn about FeelReal and see how you might want to contribute or participate in the community.
Thank you, Andy. Those are both really wonderful services and businesses that you have created. And I know artists who are listening to this will benefit from both of those channels of your work. So I encourage everybody to go check out Andy's websites and get in touch with him. And Andy's organizations will be working very closely with Artists United. We see total synergy, Andy, with what you're doing and what we're trying to do. It serves the artists really, really well. And the reason that I know that is that I've had hundreds and hundreds of conversations with people. And the theme that keeps coming up is this theme of loneliness. And it's pretty extraordinary. I've had so many people say to me, I feel lonely a lot. I feel isolated. So you talked about the fear of intimacy. Well, there's a fear of intimacy, but there's also a profound sense of isolation and loneliness. And people, artists in particular, I think one of their main needs for their mental health and their well-being and their sense of security is being part of a bigger community of people who understand what they do and who are there for them and who they can be there for too. It's really about an exchange of giving and receiving, which is what is at the heart of Artists United. So thank you so much for being our partner and for the work that you do. But before we close, is there anything that you haven't had a chance to discuss today that you might want to share that would be beneficial to the artists who are watching?
Well, I'm glad you said that about loneliness, because that's the other kind of big question that's been bubbling up for me is, can the internet cure loneliness? And it's, an intentionally provocative question. And I don't mean to suggest the internet can do that alone, but to your point earlier, we have this power to connect now, and can we use that? And we, as human beings, we thrive in community. We're social creatures. And so I agree, like the loneliness, it's an epidemic, and we could measure that in lots of ways, and people have. So I love that we're both so focused on that. The only other thing I'll add, and maybe this could be another discussion, but our discussions have really brought up a lot for me around like, what is the definition of an artist? And my own relationship with my art, music in particular has kind of come and gone from my life. And even like a reluctance to embrace that title, right? Like I'm an artist, to go out in the world and say that, whatever that might mean. So it matches up with a lot of my other work around identity in general. Like I am a change agent. I am a change agent. I am an ally. I am I'm a feminist. What does it mean to like embrace an identity like that? And in almost all cases, I prefer thinking of those as verbs, right? Like it's more about the ongoing journey and process. And so in this moment, I'll simply express gratitude for everything you do, for having me here today, and for provoking that question for me about, well, what does it mean to be an artist? And is there some kind of expectation from the world of what that means, or is it more just me connecting with my art?
Fantastic, Andy. Well, I encourage you to connect more with your art and to also embrace your inner artist, because we all have an artist inside of us, and it's our birthright to embrace that and to acknowledge that and to bring it out into the world. And the world really needs all of our gifts to be united and brought forward. And that's my personal mission. And I know that thanks to you. Thanks a lot for helping me to articulate that. This has been Artists United Television, and our guest has been Andy Swindler. Please do check out Andy's websites and his work, but also check out our website, artistsunited.net. You can sign up to become a free member of Artists United and join our community of 35,000 members worldwide. Artists United is an artist-led movement for the economic and political empowerment of artists. We help artists to exchange resources with each other, to advocate for their rights, and also to harness the power of all their art to be a force for social good in the world. We have programs like Artists United Television, which you're watching. We do events worldwide. We also have a platform that we have been developing and now exists in a prototype form that soon will be available to all our members. We have the Unified Field Project, which is uniting art on the theme of climate and the environment. And there's much, much more. Andy, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for being real.
All right, everybody, have a great day.
Who are we? need to judge your forms, and you shines beyond all noise.